Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we'll talk about systemic functional linguistics. There are different approaches to the study of discourse analysis. One important and significant approach is systemic functional linguistics. This is an approach which was proposed by Halliday. Halliday has been inspired by British linguist Firth. His approach is basically a functional approach where he mixes up the systemic part and the functional part in the analysis of language. Halliday proposes that there are three major functions of language. These major functions, which are meta functions, which he refers to as ideational function, interpersonal function, and textual function, he brings these functions to analyze the structure of a language. Unlike Chomskyan linguistics, which is largely based on the formal analysis of language, Halliday does not ignore the systemic part in the analysis, but he also fuses the functional aspect into the analysis of a language. And that is very important when we provide a discourse analysis from framework which is very common, which is referred to as critical discourse analysis by Fairclough. We have already discussed in one of the modules about the critical discourse analysis, where Fairclough brings into account the systemic functional linguistics along with other approaches for the analysis. This is an approach that we'll take up today in our module. In socio-semiotic approach to language, Halliday emphasized upon systemic functional grammar and maintains that there are three major functions a language carries out. These functions are: 1. The ideational function, which is responsible for constructing representations of the world; 2. The interpersonal function, responsible for constituting social interactions; and 3. The textual function, responsible for creating cohesively structured texts and communicative events. Systemic functional linguistics, SFL, which is normally used for systemic functional linguistics, finds its roots in the works of British linguist Firth, who conceives language as a network of relations in a state of interaction. This system is made up of various subsystems. For example, lexicogrammatical, semantic, syntactic, and is functional in nature. That is, language exists to serve different functions. Finally, it believes that it is a function that determines the form of language. Halliday, in Language as Social Semiotic, in 1978, views language as functional system embedded in a social context. This view is different to the contemporary Chomskyan or other formalist conception of language, in which language is considered to be systems of rules akin to mathematical rigor and has nothing to do with the social context or language in use. Thus, for SFL, language is a social phenomenon and focuses on functional nature of language as it occurs in different situational constructs. The prominence of social facets of language in SFL does not mean it altogether ignores the systemic nature of language. In fact, SFL is a perspective for describing language. It describes it both externally as a social and cultural phenomenon and internally as a formal system for expressing meaning. Halliday stresses the functions of language are responsible for generating its structures. It is This view of SFL as a functional system of choice that is manifested in the name of this approach. SFL interprets language as a process of making meanings. To quote Halliday, it is not only text, what people mean, but also the semantic system, what they can mean, that embodies the ambiguity, antagonism, imperfection, inequality, and change that characterize the social system and the social structure. Quote closed. Language functions. As pointed out, that there are three functions that a language performs: ideational, interpersonal, and textual. These functions are simultaneously expressed in language use. Halliday also tells us that language has three socio-semiotic variables, namely field, tenor, and mode. Field is realized through the ideational experiential function, processes, participants, and circumstances. Tenor deals with the role relationships between language users and is expressed through interpersonal meanings, mood, attitudinal, modality choices, and appraisals. Mode accounts for textual features like cohesion, coherence, and thematic patterns. Ideational function. The first meta function that the resources of language fulfill is the ideational function. This meta function is responsible for constructing representations of the world. It is divided into two sub-functions, experiential and logical. Experiential expresses concrete experiences in the world out there, deals with the processes, the participants, and circumstances. And it is made up of happenings, the contents, real or unreal, of experiences, and can be initially understood through questions such as who is doing what, to whom, where, and when. Its structural analysis is done in terms of transitivity system. Logical function focuses on how clauses are connected to each other. That is, interdependency between clauses and type of meaning relationship between them. The second one, interpersonal function, is that resource of language that fulfills the interpersonal part of the language. This meta function is concerned with social interactions. Interpersonal meta function focuses on meanings that come into play in speakers' and listeners' interactions with each other. These meanings are related to attitudes, judgments, positions, feelings, and stances expressed in the message. Modality system can be used in order to analyze this meta function. The last meta function is the textual meta function. It deals with creating cohesively structured texts and communicative events. In a structural frame, this meta function can be analyzed in terms of theme and rhyme, and other linguistic devices like cohesion and coherence. What is the correspondence between meta functions and grammatical systems? In Halliday's SFL, the three meta functions correspond to particular grammatical structures. The ideal function corresponds to transitivity, the interpersonal to mood, and textual function to theme. A word about each of these. Transitivity refers to processes, that is verb, participants, noun, and circumstances, PP, adverb, and preposition. Mood refers to clause structure, that is declarative, interrogative, degrees of certainty or obligations, tags, attitudinal words, politeness markers. Theme refers to foregrounding, backgrounding in language. Transitivity. We will not describe transitivity in detail. The experiential function, the processes, the participants, and circumstances in structural terms is known as the transitivity system. Transitivity is normally understood as a grammatical feature which indicates if a verb takes a direct object, then a verb is called as transitive. If not, then a verb is called as intransitive. However, in the Halledian understanding, whether the verb takes a direct object or not is immaterial. Transitivity gives us a good idea about how social, cultural, ideological, and political factors influence the selection of particular process type in a given discourse. Transitivity offers, according to Halliday, the language user to express the different ways in which experience is represented and is conveyed through different process types, material or action, mental and relational, and different participants and circumstances involved in each. Halliday tells us that transitivity is a fundamental property of language, is that it enables human beings to build a mental picture of reality, to make sense of their experience of what goes on around them and inside them. Our most powerful conception of reality is that it consists of going on, of doing, happening, feeling, being. These going ons are sorted out in the semantic system of language and expressed through grammar of the clause. Amongst other things, the clause evolved to express the reflective, experiential aspects of meaning. Transitivity specifies the different types of processes that are recognized in language and the structures by which they are expressed. Halliday puts forward three components of transitivity system as in the form of table, which I have provided to all of you in your module. The table which captures that the types of elements and the typical realizations, the process, participant and circumstances are realized in terms of verbal group, nominal group and adverbial group or prepositional phrase. The types of processes are, there are 6 process types: material, mental, behavioral, verbal, existential and relational. Material process denotes an activity through a goal and an actor. For example, the lion jumped on the cat. Mental process denotes some feeling or emotion through a sensor and phenomenon. For example, she hated cats. Behavioral process indicates a physiological phenomenon such as laughing, crying, yawning. For example, they laughed loudly. Verbal process includes verbs of speaking, the sayer, and the verbiage. For example, Mary said this wasn't true. Relational process shows the relations between things and persons. For example, the fair is on Tuesday. He is a member of Anglican Church. Existential process shows an existing phenomenon or activity. For example, there were many changes. Transitivity can be illustrated with the help of the following statement. He saw the accident. In this statement, the experiential function is realized through the verbal group saw as a mental process. 2 participants, one realizing the sensor realized by one of the nominal groups, he, and the second nominal group realizes the participant role known as the phenomena. To understand the logical function, the above statements needs to be extended by adding to it, but disappointingly, he did not help her. We can see here the relationship of expansion. The logical function is realized by the lexical item but. The political aspect of discourse may manifest itself in backgrounding or foregrounding of actor and goal. Processes can be active, as in he, actor, did not help her, goal, or passive, as in she, goal, was not helped by him, actor, or completely omitted, she was not helped. Transitivity and passivization shed light on how these devices lead to a particular construction of text in which how actions are represented and whether it takes the subject or it conceals the subject. SFL views language as a grammar of choice, where language user inflects it in a consonance with social circumstances. The choice of one process type over the other is thus full of meaning. Nominalization. Within transitivity, emphasis and focus can also come to the fore through exploitation of grammatical system called nominalization. The latter can be understood as a grammatical process of making nouns out of verbs. For instance, execution instead of execute, prosecution instead of prosecute, adaptation instead of adapt, or replacement instead of replace. Now let's take the following examples. The execution of the separatist leader was done with utmost secrecy. In the above example, there is hidden feeling as though the execution happened on its own. The actor may be the doer of certain processes, but was backgrounded through deletion. Closer inspection of the clauses of the text is expected to reveal whether the actor's agency is omitted to prevent any relation with the process. Accordingly, the agency engaged with the process is syntactically played down or omitted altogether, as in this case. Relational process type, for example, be, have, represent, etc., are often used in discourse, presenting facts as they suggest a certainty. For instance, we are giving you a table. We have already given you the table above. Now consider this statement. Helen was clever. The use of the relational verb was in the above statement presents the proposition as an objective truth, the validity of which is inscrutable. Modality. It refers to the system which aids the language user in the expression of their attitudes, beliefs, opinions, views, and judgments. This relates to the interpersonal metafunction that accounts for a different set of meanings which focus on speakers' and listeners' interactions with each other and with the material being conveyed in terms of attitudes and stances expressed in the discourse. The realizations of these meanings occur in terms of mood choices, statement, question, command, and modality realized by modal operators such as might, could, should. They are also realized by adjuncts like probably, usually, or different sentences adjuncts which relate to the whole of the sentence. Examples include frankly, unfortunately. Modality is realized in terms of the following four ways: mood choices, statement, question, command. Mood operators, for example, might, could, should, etc. Adjuncts like probably, usually, etc. Sentence adjuncts which relate to the whole of the sentence. Example, frankly, unfortunately. The list of lexical items taken from Fairclough would provide a good idea of words that express modality. Judgment regarding the relevance of the message are modal verbs, can, must, should, etc. Modal adverbs, obviously, clearly, probably, possibly, perhaps, definitely. With the equivalent adjectives, it is likely, probable, possible, that, etc. Copular aspects, is, seems, appears, and verbs of cognition, I think, believe, feel. Modality can also express certainty and strong obligation. High modality, must, should, always, definitely, or uncertainty and weak obligation. Low modality, could, maybe, possibly, sort of. For Barton, 2004, modality is evidential. Evidentials are words that express a writer's attitude toward knowledge. Schaef, in 1986, proposes the following three categories of evidential: degree of reliability, that is, words that evaluate the reliability of knowledge, with expressions such as probably, certainly, generally, and virtually. Evidentials specifying the mode of knowledge, beliefs, induction, deduction, sensory evidence, and hearsay, cover a range of expressions. Evidentials indicating knowledge based on belief, for instance, include I think, I believe, and in my opinion. Evidentials indicating type of reasoning include seem, induction, and thus deduction. Contrast. Words that contrast between knowledge and expectation and include hedges and other contrastive expressions such as of course, in fact, oddly enough, but, however, nevertheless, and actually. Coherence and cohesion. The textual meta function constitutes cohesion and coherence and makes sure that the utterance achieves relevance in a context. It deals with cohesive features such as ellipsis, reference, repetition, conjunction, collocation, and thematic development, which connect different parts of text to each other structurally or lexically. While coherence focuses on how speakers and writers create coherent texts, for example, he saw the accident, but disappointingly, he did not help her. In this statement, there are two cohesive devices, but that displays the contrast, disappointingly, that expresses the attitude or beliefs and judgments of the speaker that one ought to help in case of witnessing an accident. Theme versus rhyme. The textual meta function constitutes cohesion and coherence and makes sure that the utterance achieves relevance in a context. It deals with cohesive features such as ellipses, reference, repetition, conjunction, collocation, and thematic development, which connect different parts of text to each other structurally or lexically. While coherence focuses on how speakers and writers create coherent texts, consider the example, he saw the accident, but disappointedly he did not help her. In this statement, two cohesive devices are present, but that displays the contrast and unfortunately that expresses the attitude or belief and judgment of the speaker that one ought to inform help in case of witnessing an accident. Besides the cohesive and incoherent devices, textual metafunction can be analyzed in terms of theme and rhyme. Theme refers to what functions as the point of departure of the message. It is that with which the clause is concerned. Theme typically contains familiar or given information, that is, information which has already appeared somewhere or is familiar from the context. Theme typically occurs in the beginning of a clause, while rhyme is expressed through a change in intonation. For example, social work is a helping profession. Here, social work is the given information or theme occurring in the beginning of the clause, while what is left is a helping profession, the part in which the theme is developed. It is called the rhyme. It typically contains unfamiliar or new information. Marked versus unmarked theme. If the theme of a declarative sentence is also the subject, as in the sentence above, the theme choice is neutral, that is unmarked, or in other words, it has no special prominence. However, when a different clause element is theme, example, an adverbial phrase, it becomes marked and gains a greater textual prominence. The following example contains a marked theme. As a helping profession, social work places due importance to the non-judgmental attitude and human dignity and worth. Marked themes makes the text coherent and bring emphasis. Alternatively, they can be exploited to serve certain ideology. Students, in this module, we have talked about one of the approaches to discourse analysis, which is systemic functional linguistics, an approach given by Halliday. In this approach, we have seen that Halliday blends the systemic part, which is draws from Saussure, and takes another part, which is functional part, which is inspired by Firth, of looking at meaning in context. The key factors in systemic functional linguistics that we have looked at are the factors which are meta functions of language that Halliday talks about, the ideational function, the interpersonal function, and the textual function of language. And he talks about how these are realized and correspond with the three grammatical systems where he makes use of modals, transitivity, and theme, and the sociosemiotic variables. This is an approach which has been extensively used in Fairclough's study of critical discourse analysis. Thank you. I hope your understanding of systemic functional linguistics will help you in providing an analysis of any discourse that takes up the framework of critical discourse analysis, in which systemic functional linguistics is an important component. Wish you all the best. Thank you. This is Introduction to Module Pragmatics and Language Teaching. In this module, we will talk about how pragmatics can be used in language teaching. Applied linguistics deals with language teaching, language use, and language use is an important concern of pragmatics. In this module, we'll talk about the components of pragmatics. We'll also talk about the pedagogical interventions that are there, where pragmatics can be taught in the classroom. Since language and culture are two sides, very sides of the same coin, the two are very important and closely integrated. We'll also look into the possibilities of miscommunication, cross-culture communication, and misinterpretation on account of lack of awareness of each other's culture in teaching of pragmatics. And we'll also outline some instructional steps that are needed to teach pragmatics in the language classroom.
This is the summary of pragmatic.
This is a summary of pragmatics and language teaching. We have already talked about what is pragmatics. I have already explained what are the components of pragmatics. We have taken certain studies, and based on the conclusions drawn from those studies, we have seen that how pragmatics can be used in the teaching of language. We have seen that there are possibilities where the pragmatic resources, the cultural resources that students have, can be brought into while teaching a language. We have also taken up a text, a very famous text from E.M. Foster's, and tried to see that what miscommunication possibilities are there when one does not appreciate the cross-cultural differences, and one may land up in a problem leading to miscommunication. We have also explained the instructional part required in the teaching of pragmatics. I am sure if you take up these issues that we have discussed, and you may apply while taking up the pragmatics in a language classroom teaching. Wish you all the best. Thank you. This is an introduction of conversational theory as proposed by Grice. Here we'll talk about the outline given by Grice. Grice has said that conversation is an interactive exercise. It's a human activity where the interaction of both the speaker and the hearer is important. Grice believes that in the interaction there is a cooperation that is essential. That is the reason why we call it as a cooperative principle involved in this theory. This theoretical framework proposes certain maxims which are important. Those maxims are maxims of quantity, maxims of quality, maxims of relevance, and maxims of भूल गए थे ये था. Okay. Grice talks about maxims. These are maxims of quantity, maxims of quality, maxims of relevance, and maxims of manner. In addition, he also talks about politeness. We will also talk about the critique that is there of Grice's theory. Grice also talks about that how information is important in the cooperation, in his framework that he has proposed. Okay. This is the summary of conversational theory as proposed by Grice. We have discussed that conversation is basically a human activity. We have said that both the speaker and the hearer interact with each other, and in this interaction there is a cooperation rendered by both. This conversation cannot carry out unless there are certain principles that Grice outlines, which are effectively being taken up in the conversation. Grice's maxims that he talks about are the maxims like quantity, quality, relevance, and manner. All these maxims are important when we have conversational interaction between the speaker and the hearer. We have also seen that the speaker is there giving the information and the hearer takes the information. If the information is relevant for him, then the conversation will continue. But if there is no information given by the speaker, the conversation will not continue. We have talked about that how important is the information there. We have also provided a critique of this framework. The critique because this framework cannot be taken up as something which is universal. It is sensitive to culture, and we must be aware of the cultural sensitivities that are there, that may be not the same, that may be not universal in all contexts. I am sure you will be able to take up this principle as given by Grice, and you will be using it in your own analysis. Thank you.